Perth.
Thank you. Look, Mr Deputy Speaker, of course both sides of the House support this legislation. Indeed, we have on this side of the House been for the last 18 months really drawing attention to the rapidly escalating problem that was occurring in the vet fee help area as more and more unscrupulous operators sought to take advantage of the loan scheme. And I do find the last contribution really quite extraordinary. I mean, you have been in government for now over 2 years. This has been a matter of great public record. There has been report after report. A committee of which I was a deputy chair, part of its report into vocational education was to show that these scams were escalating. That there were reports, a very good report by the University of Sydney, entitled "The Capture of Private Wealth by the For-Profit Vet Sector" report. And indeed a very comprehensive report by the Auditor General in Western Australia on what was going on with the standard checking in Western Australia. So it is quite bizarre that you would have a government that has been in place 2 years where there has been a matter that has been the subject of a great deal of commentary, where we've seen the debt levels. And let's look at this. In the last year alone, the debt level has gone from 699 million to 1.7 billion. And that 6.99 was doubling of what it was the year before. So we've seen this problem grow out of all proportion, and yet the absurdity, even under this new administration, we thought when we got rid of the previous PM that we were going to have a little bit of rationality, a little bit of balance brought into the debate. So there is no doubt that this problem has, and I accept that the current minister is working to attend to this problem, but there is no doubt that under the previous administration, under the Abbott government, that this problem was left to blow out of control. Now, we do see there are the measures that have been introduced at the moment in this legislation are going to provide some protections, right? There is going to be some prerequisite entry requirements as to enrolments. There's going to be a 2-day cooling off period for students under 18. There's going to need to be a parent or guardian signature showing that that is required before the contract has any force, and a variety of other provisions. But what we know that, for example, the 2-day cooling off period is really a very insufficient provision, because one of the things that we know is that a lot of these people are not aware that they have actually signed up to a particular training program until quite some time after when they find that they have accumulated a debt and are advised that they have a debt. So for those people who are unaware that what they have signed indeed is an agreement to enrol in a particular course and an agreement, in fact, to take out a loan to fund the provider, is of course a highly unsatisfactory control mechanism. So we have moved a series of amendments that we would seriously ask the government to entertain, because we do accept that the government is wanting to move to address this problem, because it is entirely unacceptable that we have so many young people that are accumulating absurd amounts of debt for qualifications that are, in many instances, quite meaningless, that aren't going to be enhancing their ability to find employment. programs that are fundamentally driven by unscrupulous profit-taking. So we do accept that the government wants to take some steps here, but we do say, if you look at particularly provisions like the cooling-off period and you look at the sort of rorting that has been going on in the system, that you'll see that that is not really going to bring home the bacon in terms of placing some very rigorous controls around this sector. I just wanted to perhaps just talk very briefly about some of the findings that's happened in Western Australia, because although we have kept our own Tertiary Accreditation Council, we do nevertheless apply the national standards. And the Auditor-General did a very interesting report. The WA Auditor-General did a very interesting report onto the standards of the RTOs in Western Australia. And he was actually looking at the checks that were taking place by the Training Accreditation Council. And I think his problem, what he revealed, of course, was primarily directed towards the RTOs, but expressed concern perhaps about whether or not the Training Accreditation Council mechanisms that we've got in place really are sufficient to be providing enough rigour in this system. I mean, when you find that the number of organisations that are not complying, around 35% of non-compliance was critical, I think there is very, very genuine cause for concern that that the mechanisms that we have set up to regulate the RTOs aren't indeed strong enough to indeed really give us confidence that this system is going to deliver that much needed vocational training. So that in WA, the Auditor-General found that more than half of those organisations were checked were non-compliant, and of these around 35% of the non-compliance was significant or critical. And they found, the findings of the ways in which of these significant and critical non-compliance, so we're not just talking about stuff at the margin, you haven't completely filled out your paperwork, but these were really critical things like lack of evidence of student assessment, unqualified trainers, no assessment of the practical application of skills when it was required, and passing students despite their written assessments showing incorrect or incomplete answers. So we did see that there were sanctions applied to suspend, vary or cancel around 9 NTOs, but the numbers that are engaging in substantial non-compliance are indeed much greater than that. So, and I also want to comment that part of this problem with the vet fee help liabilities that have been accumulating have been the massive increase in the cost of vocational training provided by state governments. In Western Australia, there has just been a huge increase in the fees for TAFE in Western Australia for the government-provided services, which in return has, I think, created many, many more opportunities for opportunistic and and RTOs of questionable capacity and questionable intention to flourish, because the public sector is being priced out of the reach of many. So I think we've got a number of problems here that have come together in a perfect storm. The massive increase in fees, and I think what we could only say is a problematic regime of regulation that if we have got a system that shows that half of the organisations that are operating are non-compliant and 35% of those are significantly non-compliant, I don't think we can say that we have got a rigorous and strong system in place. And so I do urge us to, there's little pieces of the amendments that have come in today that are going to go a very small way to trying to bring some of the worst excesses under control, really aren't going to, I think, the fundamental heart of and the more critical problem, which is just how are we going to make more rigorous, more reliable the for-profit RTO sector, because the 50% non-compliance rate obviously is just completely unacceptable. We do need to really be looking at, I think, interestingly, what we're seeing happen in the United States, where as we are now merrily going off onto the moving away from a very heavily subsidised and free provision of TAFE education to more and more expensive TAFE education. I think it is very interesting to note the number of states and jurisdictions within the United States of America that have actually decided that this is a pathway to economic doom, and indeed are reversing a decades-long practice of charging fees and saying that in the key and critical areas of industry that they want to encourage within their states, within those areas that represent the industries that we want to encourage in the 21st century, that they are in fact getting rid of technical and vocational education fees. They are actually moving towards a system where the government provides the funds for young people to embark on those careers, and indeed perhaps older people to retrain in those critical areas, because they're recognising that this is a fundamental investment that is required for the promotion of industry, and it is every bit as important as any of the other industry assistance schemes that we engage in order to encourage business formation around our country. So I make this plea, and we're supporting this legislation. It is a very modest and somewhat belated attempt to deal with what is a very significant problem, but we do need to do more. We do need to be looking at how we, in fact, give more teeth and grunt to our regulatory regime, so that we can have greater confidence, so that we would, next time that we go and do a review of compliance, that we would expect to see that the level of compliance is far higher, and that the number of organisations where there is significant departures are significantly less. So we need to take out the incentive for those people that are coming into this space simply to profiteer without delivering a worthwhile product. So we support the legislation, but we do urge the government to consider seriously the important amendments that we are proposing to this legislation.
I thank the member for Perth.